Team Fortress 2 was released in November of 2007 on the Xbox 360, PS3, and PC as part of the Orange Box collection. Also in the collection was Half-Life 2, both episodes, and Portal. It was a good year for video games overall, and the red-yellow box was a mighty capstone. This was also the beginning of the end of video games. TF2 is a competitive team-based FPS with a highly stylized art style. It features 9 unique classes, which each have different weapons and playstyles. At launch it had a small number of maps with a few different modes like point control and capture the flag, though notably not deathmatch, the de facto mode at the time. The first major change to the game came with the Gold Rush update in April of 2008. In addition to a new map and mode, Escort the Payload, which would later be adapted by certain other games, there were 3 new weapons for the medic, the healer class, which is both needed on a successful team and wildly unpopular. The way to acquire these weapons was to complete achievements. They were varied, like healing 200 teammates who begged for help or stabbing 5 people in a row with a saw, but all required the medic class. In order to get all 3 weapons, initially 36 of the 39 were required, though that was later lowered to 22. There followed several more patches like this, additional weapons for the Pyro, Heavy, and Scout. Finally, a change arose with the Sniper vs. Spy update. No longer were achievements required to gain the new items. In fact, they didn't do anything at all. This was an attempt to address a class balance issue, wherein players only play the class which they had a reason to play. Shocking. Now, there was an item drop system. For each half hour, a player had a 25% chance to acquire a random weapon. There was no duplicate protection, or escalating odds, or RNG adjustment of any kind. It was a bad system, but it stayed for some time. That was not the most important part of the update, however, as there was an additional type of items that could drop. For every 4 hours and 35 minutes played, a player had a 1 in 28 chance of finding a hat. This was the only way to acquire hats, and the initial offerings were less than stellar. There was only one for each class, though this quickly tripled. The gates of hell had been opened, and now we knew its face. Crafting was introduced in a patch 7 months later, creating the basis of the economy. 2 weapons could be turned into a scrap metal. 3 of those could be turned into reclaimed, and 3 of those into refined. Combining these with tokens was the new way to acquire weapons, with much more choice than the random drops before, though those were still required to gather the materials. 3 refined could be traded for a random hat. That's 54 random items, or approximately 90 hours of playtime, assuming each new item was smelted. Excessive? Perhaps, but certainly doable. This was all merely a preamble, foreshadowing the updates to come. First, we have a diversion into Bill's hat. Bill is an old man from Left 4 Dead, another series by Valve, or Turtle Rock, published by Valve. Those who pre-purchased Left 4 Dead were given a hat wearable by all classes in Team Fortress. This was the first promotional cosmetic, but far, far from the last. There were certainly crossovers in video games before. Smash 64 came out in 1999, but it can be argued, correctly, that TF2 was the first domino that led to fighting Harley Quinn with lightsabers in Fortnite. The crossovers started small. Valve developed Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, Portal 2, Alien Swarm, which they published. The way it continued, though, was gluttonous. Tomb Raider, Aliens, Worms, Disgaea, Octodad, Red Orchestra, Dragon Age, Skyrim, Weta Workshop, Assassin's Creed, Batman, Quake, Deus Ex, Bioshock, Rift, Saints Row, Killing Floor, Fallout, Sleeping Dogs, Thief, The Binding of Isaac, Tropico, XCOM, Plants vs. Zombies, Magic the Gathering, and Hitman, not to name all of them. Now 2 of those were lies, but not the ones that you'd expect. And of course, Sam & Max, the Devil's Playhouse, which offered up Max's severed head. This will be important later. Back to the updates. Team Fortress 2 was released on Mac in June of 2010. Those that played it within a small window were given earbuds, another cosmetic item for all classes. In September, the largest patch for a game since Final Fantasy XIV was reborn 3 years later. This introduced crates, trading, unusual items, community-created items, and the beginning of the end of everything. Previously, a refined metal was worth 1 refined metal, a certain amount of items or time. Now, however, there was an item that you could purchase, a key. This would cost $2.49 US and allow you to open a crate. Metal could be traded for these keys with other players, and the decided upon rate was 2.55 refined for 1 key. Thus, 1 refined was worth about $1. This was certainly not the first in-game economy, which had worth outside of the game. MMOs had been doing this for over a decade at this point. This, however, was the first time it could spread beyond the reach of just one game. For Valve owns Steam, and players could trade the in-game items for games, and later sell them directly on the marketplace. There were a few other items that were key to the economy. The first was Bill's hat. It was limited in number, and thus it was worth 23 reclaimed metal, or 9 keys. Now an average hat would be worth around 1.2 keys. Next on the food chain were buds, which was also the standard measurement for expensive items. They were worth 24 keys, and there were around 100,000 of them. Finally, we come back to a pair of bunny ears, Max's severed head. These were worth 2 buds. Of course, the question became, what could these items be exchanged for? Nothing else seemed to compare to the amount of time these would take to acquire. The answer came in crates. They were a random drop, much more frequent than other weapons, but useless on their own, requiring one of the keys to unlock. The first crate had an equal chance of a weapon, hat, or paint, but there was a small note at the bottom, or an exceedingly rare special item. That item was an unusual hat. This was a cosmetic hat, but with a fancy particle effect around it. There are 14 different types of effects initially, leaving the amount of combinations in the millions. Any particular was exceedingly rare, and certain effects and hats combined were extraordinarily valuable. The most infamous example is the Burning Team Captain, a hat resembling M. Bison's from Street Fighter, but with some flames. It was sold for 540 earbuds and valued at approximately 14,000 USD. There are estimated to only be 4 in existence. So there was a jackpot, which made the crates worthwhile to open. These high-end items made buds and keys into a real currency, and thus the self-sustaining economy was created. Money was certainly made, and all the other CEOs and moneymen looked on in awe, for they had seen creation. Crates, also known as loot boxes, are now so pervasive that it defies convention when a game doesn't have them. As far and wide as Pokemon Unite, PUBG, FIFA, Dota, Call of Duty, Overwatch, Apex Legends, Warframe, Street Fighter, Injustice, Star Wars Battlefront, Paragon, Middle-earth Shadow of War, Gears of War, Heroes of the Storm, Mario Kart Tour, every single gacha game in existence, The Division 2, Assassin's Creed, Mass Effect, Killing Floor, and Path of Exile, to name a few. There's a fun game in seeing how many series or publishers collaborated with TF2 and then went on to include loot boxes. All of this is to say that money drives all things in capitalism, and loot boxes gobble up money from minnows, dolphins, and whales alike. Of all the frogs in the pot, it was only a few who said it was getting warmer, but they were crushed by the weight of the rest. Mixed metaphors aside, there is a real problem where monetization drives game design, and the incessant need for more and more causes burnout on both customers and developers. It's only now that the public is finally getting tired of half-baked attempts at games that are really just cash vacuums, like FIFA 21 receiving the lowest score of all time on Metacritic. But they still created the game, or at the very least changed the box art, and a product doesn't get made unless there is a belief that it will make money, and so they re-release the game for the same price with an updated roster, and remove the previous years from sale digitally. However, this is not even the most egregious monetization, as it is a one-time payment that's simply a huge ripoff. The truly predatory mechanic that are loot boxes work on a deeply psychological level, designed to produce exactly the right emotions to keep someone coming back. Not every game or company is like this, but there are entirely too many, and it's incredibly sad. At the start I said that Team Fortress 2 would be the end of video games, and that's a lie. It's not, but the trends it started are worrying at best and evil at worst. It also wasn't an incidental progression. The history of updates was described to explain how there was always a plan, and each step of the way built up to the final result. The devil has 3 heads, and they're crafting, crossovers, and crates. If you like this video, please check out my other ones, and if you'd like to take a look at my Patreon below, that would be grand. Wherever you are, have a good day.